So today we'll be having our activity for Excel, our first activity, and it's entitled Where My Money Goes. The activity requires us to be able to conform our existing data, our draft data, to this particular example, which contains a formatted cell for the title as well as the column headings as well as the data in comma format, and computing the sum for each of the expense items as well as the totals for each of the month from June, July, and August, and eventually coming up with pie charts for June, July, and August. Now, for this particular demo, we're going to have the raw data. The assumption is you've already typed this data and that you're ready to format the content. So for the first part, notice that in Excel, each of these boxes that you see are called cells, and that when you highlight a group of boxes or cells, you call that a range. And typically, in our case, we have a range of values which are from June all the way to August. And so at this point, we start with formatting the data by first creating the title that conforms to this particular output. So this is actually Arial Black, 20 points, italicized. So in Excel, you can also format similarly the way you format text in Word. So you can choose a font and choose the font size and select whether you want it bold or italicized. So this is where my money goes. And another thing that you can do is you can also format a group of cells and make them similar. In this case, we want to copy this format where our column headings are in white font and blue background. So applying the same thing for our sample, okay, so we have highlighted a range of cells, and that at this point, we would like to change the background to blue and likewise change the font color to white. And you may want to also probably emphasize by making them bold. Now, another thing is a shorter version of copying a format is by looking at or selecting any of the following cells with the format in place and using Home and Format Painter. So the Format Painter allows you to copy the format of your source to the destination cells. So I'm going to highlight this range of cells so that you eventually end up with the same format. So that's a shorter way of doing the formatting part. Now, another thing to format is are your data for the expenses. So what you can do is you can highlight a range of cells again from C3 all the way to E7, and you may want to also include some because some will have the same format, and at the same time probably eventually the totals. So but for this particular session, let's just start with this data, formatting it according to the following. So in Excel, it allows you to format data based on the following number formats. So you can use percent if it's percent, dollars if you want monetary, and the most common is the comma style. So we're going to use comma style, but in doing so, take note that the additional comma plus the decimal places made each of the columns wider, so you have this information that tells you that this number signs or hashtags, okay, indicates that the cell is not wide enough for the data. So all you need to do is to adjust by dragging the border between two columns and making a space, allowing a space that is suitable for the data. Now, another technique that you can do is you can highlight the columns and you can double click on the border between the columns to automatically adjust all the data based on the longest data in a cell on that range of cells. So that's one way of shortening the process of formatting the columns. Now, you may want to also format the sum and the totals later. Now, as far as the column width is concerned, again, you can adjust manually or adjust automatically by double-clicking on the in-between borders so that the longest line, the longest text in a cell also becomes the basis for the adjustment. Now, aside from that, you would like to get the total for the following. So we are planning to compute the sum, and that can be easily done by highlighting the data and then eventually using one of the most common function in Excel, which is the auto sum. So if we look at this particular pull down, notice that it's not just sum that you can automate, but you can also use average, count, maximum, and minimum. So for our purpose, we're going to use sum, which automatically gives us the sum for this particular range of cells. So the next available cell becomes the target cell for the output. Now, if you take a closer look at this value, it's actually a formula consisting of the following. So in this case, notice that the formula starts with equals and then uses the sum, the keyword sum or the function sum, and then the range C3 to E3. Now, there are two ways in activating a formula. This is called the formula bar. You can click that, or you can actually use a double click on the actual formula cell to show the actual formula behind it. So this is now the sum function, and notice that Excel color codes whatever you put as a parameter. So this is summing number 1, number 2, all the way to the last number. So we're summing a range of cells. So one technique that you can also learn is that you can simply just copy this formula to the rest of the cells. So what you can do is you can use this data field handle. This is a tiny dot on the lower right corner of your cell. If you click that and drag it downwards, what it does is it actually copies the formula and tries to compute the value based on relative addressing. So more on relative and absolute addressing as we go on with the course. Now, notice that also you can do the same computation for June using the AutoSum feature. You can compute for the vertical total. And likewise, you need to adjust. Since that would mean more digits. So you will do this. You can also do the same thing with July and August. Or you have the option to again use the data field. Remember, this is the formula. And you can use the data field again to drag and drop it across all the columns that requires totals. And evidently, you now have a completed formatted set of data. So the last part that needs to be done is for you to be able to draw the graph, particularly a pie chart, for this particular set of data. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a pie chart for June. Now, this is very easy to do. So let me just try to highlight or adjust the columns, so that you avoid having those messages. So we would like to now use the June data minus the total and use the expense items as labels to create the pie chart. Now, creating a pie chart is very easy if the data that you're using is just adjacent to one another. So like the expense column, which becomes the label, and the June data, which becomes the value for the pie chart, are close to each other. So in that case, you just have to highlight everything from expenses to June, and then select insert, and then select a chart that you want, in this case, a pie chart. And for this purpose, we would like to have a 3D pie chart, okay, to give emphasis to the 3D effects that that Excel contains. So by default, when we click that pie chart, we now have a pie chart that has been identified, okay, to have the labels, okay, the date, the month, okay, based on the column header, and the slices. Now, what is missing here is that we still need to indicate certain labels for our slices. So we can do that by using the chart layouts. So you can click on, okay, the chart, okay, particularly the plot area, and you can actually add more information to this. So what you can do is you can go to layout, okay, and you can add data labels. And at this point, you can add data labels depending on how you would like them to appear. Like if you want the data labels to be at the center which slices, then you can select that. Now, take note that each of these labels, okay, will contain formatting features such that when you click on any label that appears on your slice, okay, you can actually format that, okay, and change the font, change whatever you like. So another thing is that you can go back to layout and then go to data labels again, and you can also look at more data label options. Okay, in doing so, you end up with the following choices. Okay, so more freedom to actually modify your labels and other parts. So for example, you want it inside and outside, or best fit. Now, whichever you choose, just make sure that the label contains the value, okay? And if you would like, you can also use percentage so that you can show the value and the percentage. Now, just in case you're doing a different activity, you may just want to declutter the pie chart, then you might want to just choose percentage, okay, or otherwise. So for our purpose, we can use this, and also would like to probably do some other things with our chart. So what else can we do? Notice that aside from labels, we can also change the fill, okay? We can also change other things. Now, going back, notice that, okay, let's close that. Notice that we can also change on a per slice basis. So when we click on a certain slice, okay, and notice that the resize handles are just pertaining to this slice, okay, we can actually drag and pull it out of the pie chart so we can give emphasis to a certain slice. So this is like an ability for you to emphasize any of the following slices pertaining to whatever legend that you have. So for example, you want to highlight that your personal expense is a little bit bigger or smaller, you can just pull it out of the pie chart and probably give it a special treatment. Now, notice that you can also edit any part, like if you think that June is not enough, so you can say June expenses, so you can add more to the titles. You can arrange these particular labels, okay, so that they conform to the chart that you want. So, for example, if you drag it here and try to adjust, okay, you can manually configure what you have or what you can show in your pie chart. Now, another thing that is good about Excel charts is that you can format every part of this to contain pictures. Like, for example, you want a background picture. So what you can do is you can insert a design or a picture, okay, on your background. So that's by clicking on the chart area. So aside from doing the June expenses, you will be doing the rest of the other expenses. So the next thing is, what about if you're trying to do like you're trying to create the pie chart for July. Now take note that the July is actually one column apart from expenses, our label. So what you need to do is to start creating a pie chart with non-adjacent columns. All you need to do is to highlight one column and then press the control key, and then while pressing the control key, you click on the next set of data. So, and then release your mouse and then release your control key. So now you have just highlighted two range of cells which are not adjacent. So similarly, you can now click on insert, okay, and then insert a new pie chart, in this case a 3D pie chart, and that will be your pie chart for July. Now adding additional labels means that you need to click on layout and then data labels, and then you may want to put some more values there. Now likewise, the same thing will happen for August. You need to click on or highlight the labels, okay, and press control and highlight the values that includes the month on a one-to-one, okay, correspondence, and then insert another pie chart, 3D pie chart, and identify the labels, okay, for the pie or the values for the pie, and that's basically what you can come up with. So at this point, the rest of this particular format requirements would be up to you. So in the end, you're supposed to come up with an output similar to this plus the required labels. Okay. So have fun with Excel, and I'm expecting better outputs as we go on with the rest of the activities.